Hi, I'm Lucy Elliott-Darling, she, her, and this is my Halo Infinite level. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the changes made to the level's first major encounter, from its first test-ready stage through to its current iteration. This encounter had a very different shape and feel to it when I initially presented it to people to test. I'd missed the mark completely by making it too easy. Through observing tests, I'd concluded 3 things needed to change. The door problem. Referred to by its name by a former senior level designer at Ubisoft, I'd recognised that it was too easy for players to hang back at the entry point of this encounter and take cheap shots at the enemies, essentially inverting the intended design, as enemies would wander forward toward the player and get killed doing so. Loadouts. Almost every gun in the game has a very high effectiveness at long range. This, alongside the door problem, only encouraged the players to keep their distance and tackle the area from afar, thus not engaging with the challenge that I had intended. Enemy placement and movement zones. Exacerbated by the former 2 problems, the enemy placement of this iteration made the level too easy. The surprise brute drop pods could be dealt with out of sight of the snipers, and the ground pressure units would advance to the player in almost single file, reducing their threat considerably. Making changes. I initially attempted to fix the design flaws by simply making changes to the player's loadout. I won't go into too much detail about it here, but this meant making changes to the game's first minor encounter, so the player had less effective weapons going into this one. My theory was that I could tease the player out into the middle of the play space by providing a more effective weapon inside of it. These changes have remained up until the version you see today, but the other issues were still appearing in tests, though in slightly different forms. The limited cover the player was guided towards could easily be overwhelmed, leading to a lot of deaths. And when there weren't deaths, the player would be pushed back to the entrance of the encounter zone and continue to play from there. This also did nothing to stop players from dealing with brutes in the same area. Here I resolved to make multiple changes at once. The entrance to the encounter was completely transformed, forcing the player to drop into the zone and creating no way back for them to hide. This also meant moving the brute spawn points. I wanted the player to be looking in the direction of the snipers when the brutes came down, encouraging them to think quickly about how to dispatch them. The pressure units also received a significant change, as they were given their own dedicated move zone. This prevented them from moving up the map toward the player and turned them into a defensive unit, only posing a threat to the player once they were close enough, which they were encouraged to be by their loadouts. A minor change that had a huge impact on gameplay was the shield jackals. They were initially part of the pressure unit squad and would move with them up the map. Now that the pressure units would only defend, it felt natural that the shield jackals would take a slightly different role, so they were placed on top of the podium and restricted to that zone. This significantly changed how all players approached the area, deciding to remain in cover even after the snipers were dispatched. These jackals were eventually ranked up to improve their shield strength and threat level to further enhance their new role. The changes made throughout the development of this level created a significantly more engaging encounter that fit neatly into the game loop and intended design, and this newly designed area had been heralded by testers as one of the strongest points of the level overall. And whilst I am confident with the encounter in its current form, I am sure that new testers would show new challenges for me to overcome. This has been a breakdown of the changes of a single encounter in my level. Thank you for taking the time to listen. I'd be very excited to share more about the project and go further into detail into its production.